More behind the Crowdstrike Cybersecurity attack, the intersection of manufacturing, AI, and change management, and digital maturity. Those are just a few of the topics we're going to cover here in episode 183 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to the Transformation Ground Control podcast, episode number 183. My name is Eric Kimberling, CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And joining me, as always, is Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good to have you again, as always. And we've got a great show in store for you today. But before we get started, just a couple of logistical things. First of all, this is a weekly podcast that covers everything related to digital transformations, including people, process, technology, and strategy. And we do so in a way that's in a tech agnostic and independent view of the world. And secondly, you can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. New episodes drop every Wednesday. You can see the past episodes at that website as well. So go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to check that out. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. So thank you all for being here today. We've got a great show. We're going to dive into a few things here. We're going to get into some opening newsworthy topics. One is going to be the Crowdstrike cybersecurity attack. We can't seem to learn enough from that or talk about it enough, so we're going to dive into that a bit more detail. We'll also talk about how electricity consumption of Google and Microsoft is increasing dramatically and sort of the impact of big tech and AI and more energy consumption, what that means to the world. And then we're later going to have our guest on the show is going to be Kate Arndt. She is a technology leader at Amgen, and she's going to be on the show talking about manufacturing, AI, and change management and how it all ties together and some of the trends that she's seeing in the space. So be sure to stick around for that. And then later in the show, we will have an overview of digital maturity and what it means, how you can measure it, and how you can increase your digital maturity within your organization. So lots to cover here today. But before we jump into some of our guests and our newsworthy topics, what are some of the social media questions we received here recently, Darian?
Yeah, so I want to pull we got quite a few comments and questions on one of Eric's recent graphic posts. So I want to pull up this graphic to show the audience here, if you're watching on YouTube or any platform where you can see the screen. I want to show you this graphic and all the questions that we got from it, or a few questions that we got from it at least. So to start, Eric, the first question on this is an excellent BPM visual. I'm curious, is the quote unquote define risk piece in your visual focused on stress testing the process through risk management or defining and addressing the change management risks resulting from new processes and digital transformation?
I'll answer that with a yes. It's doing all of the above. It's identifying what the stress testing the processes. It's potentially creating a digital twin of your business processes so you can simulate what would happen with those new business processes within different types of stress tests, I guess you could refer to it as. So creating a digital twin is one way to identify risks. Certainly change management, that's always going to usually come with a plethora of risks that might come from your process changes. So those are just a few of them, but really what you want to do is make sure that you're identifying any potential things that might cause the process to break or to cause the new process to break down and make things worse than before you implemented the new processes. So yes, that's a good point and something that's really important when you look at business process management.
So kind of both is right.
Yes, he's right on, or he or she, whoever asked that question, is right on multiple fronts there for sure.
For sure. Okay, the next question we have from this is a good visual presentation. There are two additional items that I have learned are essential to the success of business transformation initiatives that utilize BPM technologies, quote unquote, therefore. Both items are essential to managing BPM and minimizing the risk of not realizing the full potential of transformation. My additions to the visual would be executive functions and role management. Eric, would you add to this visual, and would you add those specific things? Or if there are specific things that you could add to this visual, what would you add?
Yeah, those are, that is a good addition or something that's important to augment this whole BPM concept. So when you talk about executive roles, their vision and their roles and the way the executives are organized, you're really getting to sort of an entire different thread, which is around organizational change, organizational design, as well as executive alignment and organizational alignment. I know that's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of consulting speak there, but essentially what we're doing is we're trying to identify how the organizational pieces tie together to the business process management pieces that are reflected here. So, on paper, when we show a visual like this, yes, we're trying to put things in a little box into a pretty PowerPoint. But the reality is this person that asked the question is absolutely right. You also need to be looking at executive strategy, alignment, the way you've organized them. So who's doing what? If you're going to reorganize as a part of your transformation, you want to identify what those changes are and make sure it's all synced up with the higher level strategy and the higher level executive side of things.
For sure. This conversation on LinkedIn was a really good conversation. We had a lot of great comments flowing in the comment section. So if you do want to get in on that conversation or you have something to add, I would encourage you to go to Eric's LinkedIn, check out this post, and comment your thoughts about it or answer any questions that are in the comments as well.
Well, good. Well, I'm excited to talk about some of the newsworthy topics we're going to get to here in just a moment. We're going to get to talk about the Crowdstrike it wasn't a cyber attack. I think I erroneously referred to it as a cyber attack in the opening segment. It wasn't a cyber attack. It was a cybersecurity lapse. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about electricity consumption of Google and Microsoft. So we're going to cover those two things here in just a moment. And then after that segment, we'll get into our guest, Kate Arndt from Amgen, is going to be on. She's going to be here with us talking about the intersection of manufacturing, AI, and change management. So be sure to stick around for that. And then last but not least, we'll get to digital maturity. We'll talk about what it is and how to measure it and how to improve it within your organization. So stick around for all this stuff coming up in this segment or in this interview or in this episode of Transformation Ground Control. We'll be right back with more. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Transformation Ground Control podcast. And joining me before we get into more of our content here today, joining me for a quick conversation is Brian Ketchel, the Vice President of Sales of North America at Priority Software. Brian, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to have you. And you've got a company you work for called Priority Software that some may not have heard of, may not be familiar with. There's certainly a lot of ERP systems in the marketplace. So tell us, what is Priority Software and how is Priority's ERP solution unique?
Yeah, so Priority Software, we've been in the business for 40 years. We're relatively new to the North American space. Entered the space in 2016 and really sort of reinforced that in 2019 with the purchase of an accounting software called Account Edge or Acclivity. But as far as Priority and what makes us unique is that we're really, not just an ERP. It's really a versatile cloud platform that we built an ERP within that helps organizations obviously manage their business more efficiently with scalable options and an affordable price point that really cater to businesses of all sizes. The users enjoy a user-friendly interface with the ability to personalize any aspect of the system with no coding, utilizing our business process management workflows, and allowing customers to create mobile apps, portals, manage workflows, etc. Also powered by artificial intelligence, it offers process automations, recommendations, and optimization algorithms. On top of it, we have a robust, set of functionalities, and features like, obviously that are typically required in ERP, finance, et cetera, but also unique features such as a native WMS or warehouse management system, purchasing and manufacturing, planning tools, field service, as well as mobile app and portal generators.
Right. And so, it's interesting because a lot of times people think when they, pick an ERP system, they need to pick one of the household names, one of the ones you see at airport lounges or whatever. And that's not necessarily the case. You guys have some capabilities that a lot of ERP systems, some of them have and a lot of them don't have. So I'm curious to hear some of these unique features that you mentioned, such as the portal generator. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the features that your software has?
Yeah, the portal generator really, it takes collaboration to another level, allows you to create no-code, user-friendly portals that grant your vendors, your customers direct access into certain aspects of your ERP. Of course, that's done in a very secure manner and in a secure environment. But it breaks down communication barriers and fosters streamlined workflow for both you and your external contacts. So secure custom portals directly within the system, avoid those sort of messy integrations that can take place. But just take, for example, everybody wants self-service, right? This burgeoning trend that we have, and transparency within their interactions with their businesses or their vendors or suppliers or what have you. So, for example, with just a few simple clicks, and a sales manager, for example, can craft a, self-service customer experience aligned with that organization's unique business rules, allows a business to save time and resources by leveraging that inherent logic built into our ERP. And it makes it easier for vendors, suppliers, and most importantly, their customers to do business with them.
Right. Right. Now, you also mentioned you have a native warehouse management system. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, we do, and it's a huge benefit that's not as common in the industry, especially being native within the solution. It's built by actually a person who started out working in a warehouse. I know that you've met Eyal, but he's effectively the inventor. So you don't need to integrate the application, and it's built, of course, with those warehouse employees and managers in mind. It allows users to see, on a single screen, what the warehouse employee needs to do, whether it's pick, pack, ship, put away, etc. And the app can automatically deal with discrepancies according to predefined rules. We allow for the personalization of each process. So warehouse workers' activities, such a number of daily tasks they're able to complete in a day, what order they do their tasks, as well as optimizing storage space, can all be executed through the warehouse management. Obviously, we want to ensure accuracy as well. So, for example, we work with a beer distributor. You can imagine they have different bottles, different kegs, different beers, different locations. So with the WMS, one of the things that it can help with is, right, if the warehouse employee picks a 750 milliliter bottle for an order, and it's supposed to be a 1.5 liter, it's not going to allow them to pick that and put it into the packing. As far as optimization, we have another customer that's an automotive distributor that went from 95% warehouse capacity to 60% warehouse capacity, and we're able to add more lines of business without increasing the warehouse space necessary by purchasing or leasing additional space. So it's a really cool tool, very powerful, and fully native to the ERP.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you have a solution like that that's built by an end user, someone that actually has worked in a warehouse versus a technologist who thinks they know what they're doing, but they're just building technology. So that's always interesting, and I think that gives you guys an interesting perspective on the functionality you've built. And you were talking about just a moment ago some of the warehouse benefits and the value that you saw with one customer. What are some of the other things that you're hearing from your customers about the value that you and your software brings to them?
Yeah, so our customers really like, first of all, our flexibility. Our system really empowers, because we're built on that platform and really not like pigeonholed into our ERP. We have the flexibility to do a lot of things to allow our customers to build their own documents, mobile apps, web portals with no code and no hassle. They can personalize their home pages and searches, while of course we have AI running in the background to help with those recommendations within their work habits. Openness is really important to our customers as well, and it's a fundamental value for Priority. We excel in seamless connectivity with various platforms and devices. And we offer, tools like REST API, ODBC for custom integrations, a marketplace for plug and play connectors, and embedded in integrations as well, such as digital banking and tax services. And I think the other thing that people are looking for in an ERP is not to buy another ERP. So simplicity and scalability. So we facilitate organizational growth by offering the flexibility for our customers to adapt to market shifts, evolving business models, what have you. And central to this is, our business process management or BPM tool that's integrated into Priority ERP. And what customers can do with that is really autonomously create their own business processes without relying on system integrators to come in and make changes. So it empowers them to update workflows according to their evolving business needs.
No, that's great. In addition to some of these warehouse management and some of the other value and the capabilities you've talked about, I also understand that Priority is active in the electronics manufacturing space. What can you tell me about the work you're doing in that industry vertical?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have nearly 4 decades of experience in the ERP space, founded in '86. So, we've been helping numerous clients as well as electronics manufacturers globally. We have companies that, have a wide array of needs, not needs, but industries or sub-industries that they're in, manufacturing communication devices, consumer electronics, internal components. We have a customer that manufactures motherboards for slot machines, right? And they're out in Nevada. But this particular industry faces significant challenges that are pretty unique with regards to need for real-time information in production, inventory management complexities due to rapid technological shifts, and the demand for customized products, as well as the traceability for quality assurance. So we have all of that inherent, and we address those challenges, covering, all sorts of different areas from sales, planning, production, quality assurance, warehousing, delivery, and of course the financials. And then with features like end-to-end traceability and real-time visibility into the production and the supply chain, Priority empowers those electronics manufacturers, all manufacturers really, but especially to streamline operations, enhance productivity, efficiency, and really most importantly, profitability.
Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, I appreciate you being here today to share more about Priority and some of the things you're working on and some of the markets you're serving right now. For those that are listening that want to learn more either about warehouse management or Priority software in general, check out the links below in the show notes. There's a link that's included in the resource center, and that link will take you to some resources, including like a coffee talk and some other resources that will help you as you continue your ERP evaluation. So thanks for being here, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Good talking to you.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 183. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Darian Chwialkowski. We're both with Third Stage Consulting Group, which is an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. Thanks for being here today. This is the podcast that covers everything related to the independent tech-agnostic view of the world of digital transformation, with new episodes dropping every Wednesday. You can see past episodes by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. So be sure to check it out there. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions as well. So if you're interested in sponsorship opportunities or learning more, you can contact Mindy at majortom-productions.com. And we've included her contact information in the show notes below. So if you're interested in featuring your brand or service on here, you can do so by contacting her. So getting into the some of these interesting newsworthy topics, very relevant topics, and I'm excited to hear what you've got in store for us, Darian.
Yeah, so I think everybody's heard about this first article that we have here today. It's about CrowdStrike's faulty update to their security software, which Microsoft-powered systems use specifically. So that impacted multiple industries across the world and affected a lot of people. Specifically, we know, Eric, you got affected with your flights, banks were affected, etc. But this widespread disruption was due to the interconnectedness of Microsoft Cloud services, which many businesses rely on for daily operations. The article I pulled explores the reasons behind the outage, which include heavy dependence on cloud computing and third-party software vulnerabilities. It also examines the financial and operational losses across sectors such as healthcare, finance, manufacturing, retail, and education. Expert opinions on this situation highlight the importance of robust testing and proper rollback mechanisms and enhanced security protocols to prevent similar incidents happening in the future. Eric, I want to know, for you specifically, I mean, you were caught up in this, but you also have a lot of knowledge of maybe what was going on behind the scenes here. Can you give us just a brief explanation of what your view on what the situation was and what kind of fell apart here?
Yeah, great question. I think there's still a lot of information emerging from the situation, and you're right. I along with many other people in the world were stranded. I was stranded in Germany for 2 extra days a couple weeks ago, right after this happened, largely because of that CrowdStrike thing. And my colleague, actually, one of our executives here at Third Stage, was stranded for a couple days longer than I was. So he was stranded even longer than me. So, and there's a lot of people obviously that were affected by that. But that's nothing that's nothing compared to some of the other high stakes impacts it had, like with hospitals and banks. And I think there's going to be a lot of litigation coming out of this, a lot of litigation and insurance claims. And I think it's just a mess. And it's one of the biggest IT failures that, I've seen. It's got to be up there in the top 5, I would imagine, in my career. But I don't know for sure what exactly happened or how this was allowed to happen, but I think it raises a bunch of questions. You alluded to one of them, which is cloud. I mean, there's a risk with cloud. I mean, for all the advantages it has, there are downside risks. And this is something that all these airlines and banks and Microsoft customers had absolutely no control over. They couldn't do anything about the fact that the systems all went down, and the failures are pretty significant, pretty catastrophic. So, it's just when you put all your eggs in one basket of one cloud provider, you just have to recognize there's a lot of risk there. And that's the problem that I kind of see with cloud systems in the future. And I posted this on LinkedIn too, shortly after the CrowdStrike thing. I posted, like I tend to do sometimes. I was trying to stir the pot a little bit and trying to say, hey, this is the dark side of cloud that we should just be aware of. I'm not saying, let's not embrace cloud, but let's also be realistic about what the risks are. And it certainly stirred up a lot of controversy, especially people in the Microsoft community did not like me posting that, but it's more fun if I create controversy, I suppose. But so it's interesting to hear though, because I think it's something that no one wants to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about how great cloud systems are, but I think the risks are this, but there's also sort of a secondary risk, which is the vendor lock-in and having all your eggs in one basket of one vendor. You think about on a smaller scale, you think about a mid-sized company that has all of their data, all their applications hosted by one cloud provider. You just give up a certain amount of control, and you're getting a lot from that loss of control. You're gaining business value, presumably. You're gaining, more innovation, better technology, et cetera, but you're also giving up something. And that's what I think people need to recognize and just be aware of. I don't know what the answer is. The answer is not just to go, let's all just go back to on-prem and let's all just build our own technology so we don't have to worry about a CrowdStrike or a Microsoft screwing things up for us. That's probably not the answer. But what might be an answer is to hedge our risks a little bit and recognize that we can diversify. Maybe we should diversify our technology portfolio so that if there is a big disruption like this, it's not going to bring down our entire business operations. Doing that is easier said than done, but that's one way around it. Now, the one part of this that I'm not answering that you've asked is, how did this happen? And that I only Microsoft could really answer that. But what I think is fascinating is, who's at fault here? Is it CrowdStrike's fault? I know they're taking the blame, it seems like, in the media, or just when people talk about it. I even refer to it as the CrowdStrike cybersecurity issue. But who knows? Maybe it's something that Microsoft did as it relates to the CrowdStrike incorporation of the technology into their technology platform. I don't know. and nor am I a cybersecurity expert, by the way. So there's a lot of things here I don't know about this, but it does make you wonder with Microsoft, did they not have the right governance in place? Did they not have the right testing? Did they not have the right protocols in place to ensure that this didn't happen? It seems like something that you would have tested and been able to kind of draw out the potential vulnerability or the failure point as part of the testing process, but that may not have happened. So there's a lot of unanswered questions that I and many others don't have answers to. But I think probably the more important thing for us is, people and organizations that were impacted by it. I think we just have to be aware of the risks and figure out how do we navigate against those risks, knowing that something like this will happen again. We've seen this multiple times over the years where there's a massive IT failure. So we've got to figure out what we're going to do to hedge against that risk.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, we've been seeing this multiple times, or we have seen this multiple times. What are some ways that from every time this happens that companies can build resilience towards these certain situations and get more resilience, I guess, built up to these situations is what I'm asking.
It's a good question. I don't know that I have a good answer for you, to be honest. I think hedging your risk is sort of getting to the root cause of it. If you can hedge and make sure that you've diversified your risk, that certainly helps. But I suppose one thing that comes to mind is, do you have a backup plan if the systems go down? And again, I don't know, like with airlines, with my canceled flights and all, whatever, just, having experienced some of it firsthand, I don't know if there's anything that they could have done differently necessarily to have sort of a workaround, or sort of an interim stopgap answer to what to do if that happens. I suppose if they did, they probably would have deployed it, which leads me to think maybe they didn't. So I don't know if they could have, and they didn't, or whatever, but that's a very vague answer because I don't have a good answer for you on that, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like that's fair. Maybe we'll learn more about what happened in this situation and then be able to
report back,
answer that question in the future about what resilience looks like against these kinds of situations when we have a little bit more details.
Yeah. I saw a funny meme on, I think it was Instagram or something. I don't know if you saw it too, but it was a meme of a guy standing in front of a CrowdStrike. It looked like he was in an office and it said CrowdStrike in the background, like he was working at CrowdStrike. And it was obviously a fake or a joke, but it was just a picture of him smiling and then the caption was, just rolled out a quick update on a Friday afternoon, going to take the rest of the day off. And, which I thought was funny. I mean, I thought it was pretty funny because it was just kind of poking fun at, like, just you imagine some random guy or gal just sort of, let me just do this real quick patch and I'm out of here. And it brings down the entire, world of systems throughout the world. So one other thing too, that's worth noting, I don't know where I read this. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, but the guy that's the CEO, and I don't recall his name, the CEO of CrowdStrike was also the CEO of, now I'm going to forget it, but it was a company that had a similar massive IT disruption in 2010. I can't remember what company it was, and I wish I could. This is not helpful that I'm giving you partial information, but it seems as though, I'm not blaming the CEO necessarily, but it sounds like from what I read that he's overseen now two really big, massive cybersecurity issues, in our history over the last, 15 years. So just an interesting data point there, but interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I also saw quite a few memes like an intern presses the quick software update button and then they bring down the whole system for the world. And
it makes you wonder though, like how it makes you wonder if it's something real little like that. I mean, it's kind of it's meant to be funny, I know, but it does make you wonder, like, was it just something that seemed simple enough and boom, or did they think, oh, this could be a problem, let's test it out, and they went through a rigorous process and still had problems? Or I'll be curious to learn more over time.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see more of the behind the scenes on how this situation actually occurred, if they ever release it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to switch gears here and get into our second article of the day. This next article discusses the significant electricity consumption of Google and Microsoft in 2023. This amounted to 24 TWh each, which is surpassing the power usage of over 100 countries. This high consumption is largely due to data centers, which support cloud services and AI advancements. The that I pulled highlights the environmental impact of this energy use, but also notes that both companies are strong advocates for renewable energy. Microsoft's valuation has notably benefited from early AI investments, and there are concerns about future power needs within the rapid growth of AI technologies, which I think is something we talk about here a lot, is how fast the AI industry is growing and changing. And obviously that electricity or that support is going to have to come from somewhere for AI. So Eric, with this exponential growth of AI that we've seen over the past couple of years, how do you foresee the power demands of each tech company evolving over the next decade?
Well, I think, we've already been seeing a lot of signs that it's going to exponentially increase. And this, your article is a good one that points to that same thing. I think the data centers, I think in many cases what data centers are probably doing is you're not actually increasing power consumption overall, because what the big data centers are doing, they're taking over some of the processing functionality or processing energy required. They're taking that from companies that were doing that on their own. So it's sort of like, instead of a decentralized power consumption, now it's all getting concentrated into, single areas where the data centers are. But AI is where I think the big net impact is going to be, because that's where now you're adding net new power consumption and computing power, and it's just mass amounts too. Kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen, have you ever seen a, what's it called? A Bitcoin mining server farm, like where there's all these servers that are chewing up all this power, just trying to mine for Bitcoin or for cryptocurrency. And so it kind of reminds me of that, but just on a massive scale, because now all these big AI providers are having to have just massive amounts of computing power. So I think it is going to have exponential increase on power consumption in the world, which I know is going to strain a lot of power grids throughout the world too. And it's not, most of the power grids in the world are not built for exponential increases in power. So that's, I'll be curious to see just how the utility companies throughout the world deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing with this is that AI is obviously expanding rapidly and we're seeing it grow, but all these big companies are seeing their investments that they're making in AI grow their financial or impact their market valuation and financial performance, especially for companies like Microsoft and Google. So it's something that obviously they want to keep expanding to. And I think it's where all these big companies are going. But how do you think that piece of it affects them wanting to do it further? Because obviously if it's making them more money, they're going to want to keep doing it. Is that the kind of situation that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they are going to want to keep doing it just because it does make them more money. I don't think they're going to back off. And I think what might happen though is, I think that's where you start to get more government regulations that probably will kick in throughout the world for how these computing big tech providers, how they affect power consumption and that sort of thing. I'm not sure how, but I would imagine the government would be the ones to, when I say the government, I mean global governments throughout the world would probably be the ones to start looking at that a little bit more closely.
For sure. Because right now, obviously, there's not much regulation on the AI industry. And I think that's something that we know as well. So I don't know if you're going to have an answer to this question either, but we know that AI is taking up and gaining or using a lot of new power that wasn't used before necessarily, unlike data centers, like you said, how data centers are really just moving the power from separate locations to one centralized location. With this power consumption, do you think, and this might, again, not be something that you know, but is there any way or any ideas that you have to reduce the power consumption for AI in the future?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I don't know I suppose more efficient computing as computing continues to become more and more efficient. I mean, that'll probably counteract or offset some of that consumption, but I think AI and the processing behind it is just growing so exponentially. I don't know that, I imagine no matter what you do, the net impact is going to be a lot more consumption over time, especially if you think about, we haven't really started to use AI to anywhere near its full potential. So as we do, I mean, I can't even imagine or fathom what that impact to power consumption is going to be.
For sure. Because I'm sure there's a lot of AI versions out there right now that obviously aren't released to the public and that are far more advanced than what the public has access to. Um, and we don't know how much power those are currently taking up for just the small usage that they're being used for. So I think that'll be interesting to see in the next few years as AI advances and we get the more advanced versions of AI. How does that affect, the power throughout the world?
And also, as we start to see data around how power consumption is being impacted, year over year, especially as it relates to AI, that'll be super interesting to see as well. So good stuff. Well, thanks for that. Those newsworthy topics. We'll get into our guest we want to bring on the show next, which is Kate Arndt, who is a technology leader at Amgen, and she's been in the industry for quite some time now. And she's going to be on with us to chat about the intersection of manufacturing, AI, and change management. And after Kate's on the show, we'll talk about digital maturity, how to measure it, how to improve it, and what it means, really. We'll cover all that here at the end of the segment. So be sure to stick around for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful things, if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Welcome back to episode 183 of Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting and produced by Major Tom Productions. And excited for our next guest and topic. We're going to talk about AI and change management for manufacturing companies. And joining us to have that conversation is Kate Arndt, who is the Senior Manager for Technology Strategy and Innovation at Amgen. And she's got a really interesting background because she's been involved with sales and operations as well as technology. And so she has sort of a unique perspective on multiple facets of digital transformation. And we're going to dive into AI and other emerging technology and change management at manufacturing companies in particular. So excited to have this conversation with her. She's a first-time guest on the show, so really appreciate her being here. All that being said, Kate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you. It's your first time on this show. It's the first time you and I have had a chance to have a formal interview like this. So I appreciate you being here today. Before we jump in and just start diving into the topic at hand here, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Amgen.
Sure. So at Amgen, we are working really hard to prioritize implementing various technologies kind of across the organization. But my role at Amgen is to kind of focus on the manufacturing side of things and working with our alliance partners to integrate these new technologies into manufacturing in the most effective and beneficial way possible.
Great. Great. Now you've been in the technology space for some time now. How did you end up in this space, and how did you sort of grow up and get to this role where you're at right now?
So I have a little bit of a, I guess, varied career. I studied industrial and manufacturing engineering in college, and then I went to ExxonMobil and basically sold industrial and automotive lubricants and greases. So that was a lot of exposure in the industrial space. I spent so much time, my whole career, in manufacturing, seeing it from different lenses. And I've always been obsessed with data, though, and I realized there's such an opportunity for manufacturers if they were to be able to access their data and use it. It would really revolutionize their entire production and optimize, their businesses. So that's when I kind of decided to make the change and go into tech. And I basically found a computer vision AI startup that focused specifically on manufacturing use cases. And that was my break into technology about, I want to say, almost 4 years ago. So it's kind of crazy that it has been so long. And then it's kind of just blossomed from there. It's been super fun, and basically ended up at Amgen because I feel like the experiences I had at the startups really gave me a lot of exposure to a very diverse range of needs in manufacturing. And I've seen, the experts who have done a really good job in implementing AI. Different companies do that firsthand. I've also seen what doesn't work. So I'm really excited to bring, some of those lessons to Amgen and, do my best to help them out in any way.
That's cool. So it sounds like you sort of led your career with more of the business side, and then you added the technology layer a little bit later on, or a little bit more recently. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. So I think that I was always a technical and business blend, I guess I'd say. And ironically, in a sales role, which has been my past, I've always been very interested in the tech side of things. So, yeah. But so I've come to this position now that I, to be honest, I'm excited not to be in sales for a little bit. Yeah. It'll be nice to be on the other side of things.
Yeah, and do real work instead of just kidding to all the salespeople that might be listening right now.
Yes.
Well, speaking of the audience here today, I want to just real quickly acknowledge, while we're doing introductions here, quickly acknowledge where everyone's joining from today. We have someone, I don't see the name, but on LinkedIn from Monterrey, Mexico. Darian's joining from Denver. Even joining from Croatia. Saif, Saif didn't say where he's from, but hi Saif. Vipin from Boston. Sam Graham from Spain. Welcome back, Sam. I haven't seen you in a few weeks. Saif from Pakistan. Jonathan from Greenville, South Carolina, kind of close to where you are right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And Craig from Hereford, UK. Babek from Iran. So thank you. Just a few examples of where people are joining from today. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. And again, if you have questions as we get started here, I'd love to hear your comments and questions here in the chat. So I guess as we get started in this conversation, Kate, how would you summarize how AI and manufacturing has evolved, where we stand here today in mid 2024?
Yeah, so it's funny. I mentioned I've loved technology and data, but when I went to school, which feels like forever ago now, and when it comes to AI and technology, it kind of is forever ago now. Essentially, leveraging data meant getting information from a machine in hindsight, and then being able to run analyses from historic data. And that was pretty complex, a little bit clunky, and it didn't really provide real-time information. So you're always going back retroactively to kind of solve your problems. I think that what AI has done and how it's helped manufacturers evolve who've been able to utilize it is allowed them to see things in real time, and in some cases even be more predictive and getting ahead of things in what might come out of the historic data, and being able to predict what could come down the line. No pun intended in the production process. And how AI's evolved specifically, I think that there's a lot what I've realized is that it does help when there are AI companies that specialize in manufacturing, because it is such a complicated space to implement such complex technology. So I guess that's what I would say is I think that the domain expertise and the specialization of AI companies, or portions of an AI company specializing in manufacturing, has really helped AI evolve. And especially like these companies now understand use cases and can kind of repeat their successes and grow their products in a way that's more geared towards the needs of a dynamic environment like manufacturing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like AI is having a big impact on all kinds of industries, not just manufacturing, but I do think that manufacturing has sort of a unique opportunity to make even better use of AI than any other organization, largely because, like you said, the complexity of manufacturing organizations sort of lends itself to potential AI value. And also the data, you talked about the data a moment ago. When you look at all the data that a manufacturer captures, from the shop floor to the back office, to the supply chain, to the customer side, I mean, there's just so many data points that if you could figure out how to use AI to make better use of it, I feel like it's really ripe for high business value there.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I know it's a big thing, and I know that, manufacturers are starting to figure out like how to use AI. And I think a lot of them are struggling with it, sort of how you alluded to that. But what do you think will happen, as you look to like the rest of this year into 2025? If you had to predict the future, which I know you can't, neither can I, but if you kind of look at where we're headed, how do you think manufacturers will start to adapt? I know you talked about AI providers being a little bit more specialized for the needs of manufacturers, but how could manufacturers themselves, do you think, or how do you think they will start to adapt and maybe start to get some momentum behind some of their AI initiatives?
Well, I think the pressure of right now, I think we're at like the cusp of seeing the early users of AI and early adapters of AI. They're going to start to, really break away from the other later to the game manufacturers. I think that there's going to be a very clear distinction between, manufacturers that have leveraged their data in a competitive advantage way. And I think that that's going to provide a little bit of urgency to manufacturers who haven't really committed and been able to follow through with implementing data-driven technology in their production. And I think that what's maybe holding them back more than the technology is the challenges that come with, people and the organization and changing the way manufacturing operates as a whole. We went from pretty siloed roles and responsibilities, like maintenance was maintenance, operations is operations, and that's not, and then business is business, IT is IT. And then when it comes to implementing AI, you need a much more holistic approach. So if the manufacturers that are lagging a little bit behind, I think that what they'll need to do is get really serious about really intentional about their commitment to implementing these technologies.
Yeah. Do you think manufacturers are going to know, even if they are committed to it, like they say, okay, yeah, we're committed to AI, we're going to double down on it, we're going to invest heavily in it. Are you seeing that they know how to get started, or do you see them struggling with where do we begin? Because I feel like you said, it's such a big, complex animal, the whole manufacturing space, it can be overwhelming.
I think that's their biggest challenge is, it's so large in scope, and the leaders know they want to implement AI, but they're like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And then they're also struggling because there's so many vendors out there that are trying to sell them solutions that, may or may not fit their needs. And it's such a large scope. I think it can be a little bit overwhelming, and it's easy to make the wrong decisions. So I do think that that's something they struggle with. And it's like the paradox of choice. If you have too many choices, you're going to take forever to make one. And a lot of manufacturers want to make sure they have everything perfect before they start to implement technology solutions. And that can hold them back a little bit too, because the longer they're waiting to get their foundational platform perfect, the more technology is evolving and the more they're missing out. So even if they get it perfect in 2 years, AI solutions are going to be much different in 2 years. So I hope that answers your question. I kind of went a little bit.
No, it does. It's great. And actually, it leads to a follow-up here. This is actually, and I was thinking this exact same thing because, of course, great minds think alike. And Sam Graham is a regular on this show, and he asked, what foundations do companies need to have before putting AI in place? And that was actually the follow-up I was going to ask you too. When you think about the foundation that a manufacturer needs, what do you mean by that?
Sure. What I mean by that is manufacturers have all of this equipment, right? That's producing data, whether or not they're extracting it and contextualizing it. There's a lot of data that's kind of just hanging around waiting to be used. The foundation that a lot of manufacturers want to put in place is like, especially let's say they have multiple facilities, they want all of their facilities with the exact same tech stack, each of them having, the same historian, the same data lakes and the same technologies. But the challenge is there is they have to evaluate their current tech stack, then eliminate some and then reintroduce some. So it's really, they're trying to create a very consistent standard across their organization. And while I can understand that and appreciate it for like certain pieces of their tech stack, I do think that is a barrier to them implementing more advanced technology sooner. And the foundation, though, I'd say if you want to implement AI, collecting the data from your equipment is like the baseline, right? Yeah. But I don't think you need to do it across your whole facility to get value right away. If you came up with like a use case, thinking, okay, this one line has a bottleneck that I'm sure about. I think it's with the pump. Maybe something's not flowing right. Maybe you want to evaluate one line against 3 others. Focus on collecting the relevant data to that use case. See if it helps solve your problem. Leverage AI for that data specifically, and then you can scale it. Versus making sure you have all the data for all the lines and then applying the AI. I think that is another thing that they could kind of expedite the process a little bit more.
Yeah. And if they could find like even if they're little tiny little use cases, if you could find some like pockets of innovation where you're trying out innovation for a little part of your business or a little part of your process. And then once you sort of fine tune it, then you can start to scale it, across the organization. It seems like that, more of an agile type of approach could be a way to do it rather than trying to take that traditional approach that you might take like with a big ERP system. You're going to, a lot of times take more of a waterfall approach where you try to define all your requirements up front and try to define your end-to-end business processes and then implement the technology. I don't think that's really how AI is going to add value. And I think the technology is changing so fast, it's just going to become outdated by the time you deploy it if you take that sort of slower approach there.
Exactly. And for the manufacturers that, are very committed to that approach, I say, fine, go that route. But at the same time, there's opportunity that you can do that. If you cherry pick use cases, you'll get a lot of value there and might as well start implementing that in parallel, even if you are working on just the foundational part. But computer vision is a really good example as like, you don't need a big foundation. If you want to understand, maybe you're doing a quality check, leveraging like computer vision, you need, the hardware, and then you need, essentially you're going to be operating on the edge if you want real-time information. So there's some connectivity that's involved, and then whatever analytics platform you're using on top of that, or AI platform on top of that. So the data is a very specific set of information, but it doesn't require that much foundational technology besides, what's specifically involved in that application.
I'm here with Kate Arndt from Amgen talking about AI and change management within manufacturing. We've got a lot more to cover. I've got a lot more questions for Kate, so be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground. People oftentimes ask me how I built such a strong social media following on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and other outlets. And the fact of the matter is it took me a long time to build a following through a lot of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes. Had I known that there were companies out there that could help me build my brand, I would have done that a long time ago. I didn't know that, but the good news is that there is today a consulting firm that will help you through building your own personal brand through some of their training programs. The company is called Roloff Consulting, and if you're familiar with Emma Roloff, she's someone that I've had on this podcast before, and she's well known in the digital transformation space as well as the sales space. And she's big on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And she and her husband have started a training course and a training company that focuses on helping people build their personal brands and helping them to sell themselves digitally. So whether you're a salesperson that's trying to reach more customers or you're an individual that's just trying to build your personal brand, that's something that they help with through their training programs. And they've offered listeners of this podcast a free 5-day LinkedIn challenge. And I encourage you to check it out. I've included a link below for this podcast. If you go to the podcast notes, you'll find a link that gets you free access to this 5-day challenge where you'll get step-by-step guidance. You'll get real results. So you'll get some tangible results from the program. And you also get a special offer at the end of it. So it's exclusive to listeners of this podcast. Be sure to check out the link below if you want to work on building your personal brand, or if you're in sales and you're trying to reach more people. Whatever the case may be, check it out. It's free to listeners of this podcast. You can check it out via the link below.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Welcome back to episode 183 of Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian and Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions. It's sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And I'm here with Kate Arndt, and we're talking about AI and change management in manufacturing. Here's a comment from Saif. It's sort of a follow-up comment or a response to Sam's question about what foundational stuff needs to be in place. But Saif has, first of all, plant and machinery need to be equipped with PLC. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Does that mean anything to you, Kate, or do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's one of those things, like in the situation where, if it's a computer vision application in that very specific use case, I'm not really sure how relevant a PLC specifically is. But yeah, if you want to, at the last company I was at, if you wanted to build a digital twin, basically you needed a historian where your data was going. So we could use that historic data in order to build that digital twin. So different Industry 4.0 technologies, if you will require different foundation. I'm just saying that there are use cases in AI that don't require as much. However, I will say, if you're not, like, the bare minimum is you need to be collecting data. It needs to be going somewhere, whether it's a data lake or on-prem, whether it's, a public cloud, or that's pretty much a bare minimum requirement. But other than that, if you have the data going somewhere, that's the foundation, I guess, for AI.
Yeah. Now, what about the initial early signs of the impact that AI is having on sort of the human side? And that's part of what we want to talk about here today too, is the change management piece of it. I know so far we've been talking about how we can get our heads around how to use AI or how to build some of these use cases, get the foundation in place to be able to start to deploy AI, maybe even on just a limited scale. But from what limited usage of AI that most manufacturers are seeing right now, what sorts of impacts are you seeing to the human side of the equation, or how do you think AI will impact people, longer term?
So how AI will impact, so My favorite thing about it, I'll start with the positives, I guess, is safety is a really great use case, or it's a really beneficial impact of AI on humans in manufacturing settings. So where in the past you might have to go inspect something that's in a dangerous area, maybe it's very hot, or it's like, you have to kind of crawl through some sketchy crevices that might be dangerous. Now you can leverage, robotics and computer vision to go and make assessments in basically replacing the human when it comes to the physical evaluation, and also making the work environment safer. Because if you're evaluating or trying to understand how your equipment is just from a safety perspective, if you're able to do that more consistently and find trends in your data, then you're more likely to be able to prevent incidences from occurring, just like you would optimize your production. So from a human impact, I think safety is one of the best things that are going to be coming from this. Also with ergonomics, being able to automate tasks that were ergonomically unhealthy for humans, I think that will be beneficial as well. And then empowering like operators who are hands-on. A lot of times they might not know exactly what to do if something's going wrong. It might be like a gut check. So empowering operators with like specific information in real time, I think is, just another aid and another tool. I will say it's important to think about the actual technology that's communicating to the operators. There's an example that someone gave that they invested a lot of money in really heavy tablets. And so their entire manufacturing facility, they all got these really heavy tablets. And they didn't really talk to the operators about it to get their input before they made the purchases. And no one was using them. And they were like, well, why aren't you using them? And they got that information, that feedback. So I think it's really important on both sides, like getting the human feedback and really incorporating everybody who is working in manufacturing settings, incorporating them in the solutions so that it does provide value to them and make their lives easier, as I would assume the intention is for most companies.
Yeah, and it's sort of, you're sort of answering this question. I'll pop it up anyway, even though I think you just sort of alluded to it or answered it, but this is from someone on LinkedIn. I don't see the name. I apologize, but it says, what are the critical challenges in implementing AI in manufacturing, and how can change management practices address these challenges to ensure a smooth transition? And sort of you give a good example there of what happens when you don't do good change management with the tablets and people weren't using them. Is there any other advice you'd have for, companies as they think about just change management strategies that, might be helpful for them?
Sure. So many stakeholders. That's one of the biggest things I'll say on both sides of the spectrum, whether I'm selling technology to a manufacturer or I'm a manufacturer and I'm trying to implement technology. I kind of mentioned this before, but in the past, manufacturing pieces of the organization in manufacturing all had their own scorecard, so to speak. They had their own goals. And if you want to implement AI effectively, then you need input from every single, silo in order to make it effective from a business perspective. And starting with the business value, I think that's the other thing that manufacturers kind of are a little disconnected about sometimes, because maybe it's the technology group, like I'm part of the technology group, but if we're not thinking about the business value of implementing technology in our manufacturing facilities, then we're not aligned with our overall goals. And that can lead to digital debt, another buzzword I hear, but you're making these massive investments. And if you don't have that alignment from manufacturing and the business side of things, then, and you don't start with like a lot of intention and a use case, then it could lead to that. And I think that's another piece of it. I think the upfront planning is really important. And when I say that, I mean upfront planning in the exact use case that's going to bring you value. So my favorite way to go about that is kind of brainstorming where a use case might be most feasible. And by feasible, I mean where you have the data and where you have people that have the appetite to try something. So if you have multiple facilities, which facility is most likely to take on a technology to kind of learn about it and be the, example for others. And then they have the data, they have the resources. And then I also like to brainstorm based on the impact and the business value. And so based on those two scores, kind of ranking the use cases, and whichever one has the biggest business impact and is the most feasible, that's where I recommend starting out, and then scaling should it, provide value.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. We're getting a lot of good comments and questions here and actually humorous ones too, which I always appreciate. Speaking of humorous comments, this is from Will Quinn on LinkedIn. Says, wait, leaders didn't consult with frontline employees before deploying a new tool? What? I've never heard that happen either. So I'm shocked, just as shocked as Will is to hear that. But kidding aside, that is a very real issue, obviously, with a lot of manufacturers. Here's a comment. I want to pull this up. This is getting a little, I'll forewarn you, Kate, this is getting a little outside the scope of anything that I can answer. This is way over my head because we're getting into literature and stuff here, and that's not my thing. But this is from Sam. Sam Graham on LinkedIn says, in the 19th century, Charles Babbage, he corrected it on his next comment. He said it's actually Charles Babbage developed a mechanical computer that almost worked. He reported being asked, pray, Mr. Babbage, if you put into the machine wrong figures, will the right answer come out? Is there a danger of AI generating a similar question? So in other words, if the data is bad, is that going to create problems for AI?
Yeah. Yes. That's why I call it like a data pipeline, especially if you're getting data from various sources. You need to put a lot of time and effort into that data pipeline to extract the data and contextualize it. And you need to have somebody that owns the data integrity. An example that I'm going to be stealing from one of my Industry 4.0 club team members is in her facility, for some reason, the Fahrenheit temperature data changed to Celsius all of a sudden. Totally obviously changed everything that they were getting from their AI. And that was where she realized, okay, if we're going to be implementing this stuff, there needs to be somebody who's monitoring this. Because, depending on your application, it could cause a lot of problems.
Right. Yeah, totally. And you don't want to assume, well, because it's AI, it must be right, especially if you've got bad data going in there.
Well, we've all seen ChatGPT's, incorrect answers. So
yes, we have.
Yeah.
I'm here with Kate Arndt from Amgen talking about AI and change management within manufacturing. We've got a lot more to cover. I've got a lot more questions for Kate, so be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. Could you whisper in my ear? I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown, Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Welcome back to episode 183 of Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian and Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And I'm here with Kate Arndt, and we're talking about AI and change management in manufacturing. Yeah, one of the first things I did when I first used ChatGPT was I entered in the prompt. I said, tell me who the leading independent digital transformation consulting firms were, because I was hoping to see Third Stage on there. It did not tell me Third Stage, but what it told me is all these other companies that are not independent. So I was like, that's not true, because those companies are affiliated with software vendors. So that I was a little jaded early on, but I think it's actually getting a lot better. But still, I mean, there's still wrong data out there that ChatGPT is drawing from in certain cases, and you just have to be aware and know that you've been disciplined about your data cleanup and your data governance and all that stuff, which has always been important. But I think manufacturers have struggled a lot with that over the years.
And that's another good point of what might be holding manufacturers back, or like the critical challenges, right? Resources. Everybody wants to implement these solutions, but I don't think they understand like the independent resources that need to be responsible for these projects. Because everybody that has the day job in a manufacturing facility, they don't have the time to take on an AI project as well. And often it requires their input, but there needs to be more people who are coming in and helping out versus like people who already have a day job,
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Here's another comment from Will on LinkedIn. He says, AI really starts to gain traction when you have an industry expert working with the development team to create real life use cases that help their customers gain value. And that's a great point. I think more so than even other technology initiatives, you need IT and business representation. And Kate, you mentioned all the stakeholders that need to be involved too. There's just a lot of collaboration that goes into making these AI initiatives work. Here's a really interesting question that kind of put you on the spot here, Kate. This is from Luis on LinkedIn. Luis says, what is more critical, people's involvement in the project or integration between systems? Which I feel like they're both important, but do you feel like one is more important than the other?
That's the magic question. I guess, the integration one's easier to answer because it depends on the application. That's my, cheating answer, right? But I mean, obviously that's super important. I'd say that when it comes to what's hindering manufacturers from leveraging AI, it's the people, the organization. And I'm not saying people are getting in the way on purpose. I'm saying it's hard to completely change how you operate. It's hard to implement. Like, I didn't like when I got a new CRM or something, and it was one tool and had nothing to do with AI. I just didn't want to use a new system. So implementing technology that's going to like be part of a person's day-to-day and expecting them to use it is such a big challenge. In fact, that's one of the things that Amgen tracks. Of all the tools that they're implementing, they're tracking, utilization and getting input from their employees. And then that's a big consideration that they're making when they're evaluating implementing a technology is, will people use this? And because, if no one's going to use it, then it's kind of not worth, the technology can be great, but if no one's using it, it won't really matter.
Yeah, I agree. Here's an area we haven't really touched yet is, this is from Saif on LinkedIn. He says, can AI help with supply chain management like material planning and production planning in manufacturing? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think that is a really tough space just with the outlier events. But, if you kind of take the outliers out of the equation, it's very beneficial. Getting real-time information from your supply, the further you can go down either upline or downstream, I'd say upline if you're trying to plan for your production process itself. If you get better information going in, you're going to know a lot more on how to optimize your production based on that. And then also the demand that's pulling from your facilities. So demand planning is definitely, I think, an opportunity when it comes to supply. And then also Quality is another thing, and supply, I guess that's really relevant and important, especially like, I don't know, some paper recycling mills, for example, they have suppliers and get a lot of variety in what they're recycling. And those inputs matter a lot in their production and how to kind of tweak what they're doing in order to make the product to spec. So I think that understanding that data going in and collecting data, that's just an example from these suppliers, and knowing what's coming kind of helps set you up for success to optimize your production, according to what's coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where so much of the complexity is too. When you get to material planning and production planning, that's where there's a lot of opportunity to take just mass amounts of data and make better use of it, and augment the human tribal knowledge that's probably been running your supply chain and your material management, your MRP, and all that stuff for the years past. What about career prospects? When you think about, people's careers in manufacturing and in technology, how do we navigate our careers differently now, knowing that AI is a thing and it's here to stay? Does it change our career approach, or what kind of skills should we be developing? What are your thoughts there?
Well, if you're asking me personally, I did an Ikigai exercise where, have you heard of that?
No.
Practice? Okay. Essentially like 4 Venn diagrams when you're trying to figure out your career. I guess like what you're good at. I'm going to forget all 4 now that I'm on the spot a little bit. What you're good at, what the world needs, what you can make money in, and then what you enjoy doing. So where those converge. And that's kind of how I picked my career. And what I'm getting at is AI was a massive consideration in my choices in my career. Personally, I think that it's here to stay. And the more, experience that you can get, hands-on experience with it, especially in more complex applications, I guess the more valuable I think you'll be long-term. I guess what I'm getting at is get your hands dirty, like just if you can get access to learning about AI, I think it's a very important skill set to have moving forward in career opportunities. Like, it's obviously a massive thing that employers are looking for is people with AI experience. I know AI has been around forever. Everyone will say that. But when it comes to the recent AI boom, that talent is, still a small pool. So if you can break into that, I think it would be of value as far as, differentiating yourself from other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And you get ahead of the curve. I mean, it's an opportunity to leapfrog other people that are starting their careers or trying to make a change. So the more you can do there, the better.
And it's great. You learn a lot too.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like it so much. It's still so fairly new that you're problem solving all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. And like we've been saying, the common theme we keep coming back to is there's so many different ways you can use AI. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And also data science too. I noticed that it seems like a lot more younger people coming out of university now are focusing on data science, even if they're not wanting to get directly into technology. It seems like that's just a hot trend just from what we're seeing in the market right now, which I think is smart to focus on the data side of things. What about, other than AI, in addition to AI, what are some of the other technological considerations or trends or risks? What are you seeing that's really important to manufacturers right now in the ones you've worked with?
Well, you mentioned Crowdstrike, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a big one. So if you are going to be implementing AI in manufacturing, depending on the applications and what risk you might be subject to should your AI stop working or you lose connection, having a multi-cloud approach, I think, is of value. I had 2 experiences with public cloud providers where my customers weren't able to, use their AI in their production, and they relied on it. And if operators are, unable to get that information, It throws them off in a way that's definitely not good for manufacturing and production. And then when it comes down to risk, it's like, depending on what you're producing, it's one thing if it's like, I don't know, fidget spinners. I don't know what manufacturing facility makes those. That's just the first thing that came to my mind. But like, who cares if those get, it's not going to harm anyone. But if you're producing something in biotech and you don't have connectivity and you're reliant on it, it's a big risk. So I'd say like reliability, both from the a network connection, and then also cybersecurity these are more general considerations, but I think needs to be built into your overall strategy and who you decide to partner with, making sure that you vet them out appropriately and understanding the risk. So if you're going to do like a closed loop control in your production process, know what happens if, it stops working all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you made a good point about the higher risk your product the higher risk your product is, then obviously the more risk you have with cybersecurity, and, AI hallucinations and other issues from other technological issues as well. I know a lot, like with the CrowdStrike thing, a lot of hospitals were impacted, banks, when you're dealing with people's money, that's always a risk. When you're dealing with people traveling, that's always a risk. So, a lot of high profile, high stakes sort of impacts there. So, and you mentioned safety and regulatory. You had that whole thread a few minutes ago about the safety and regulatory side of things too. I mean, you really do have to be extra cautious in some of these critical areas when you're deploying any sort of new technology, and recognize those risks, like you said. I'm here with Kate Arndt from Amgen talking about AI and change management within manufacturing. We've got a lot more to cover. I've got a lot more questions for Kate, so be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say to me. I've been waiting for so long to hear.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Welcome back to episode 183 of Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian and Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And I'm here with Kate Arndt, and we're talking about AI and change management in manufacturing. Here's a question from Saif on LinkedIn. What are the key points needed to review to evaluate organizations' readiness before opting any AI solution? I suppose this gets back to that foundational piece. We talked about data, things like that. What if you were to what are some of your thoughts there, in addition to what we've already discussed around some of the things that need to be in place or to show that we're ready? You also mentioned, by the way, the executives have to be on board, and the organization has to be committed to AI. That's another thing, or prerequisite. Are there other prerequisites you could think of that we'd want to make sure we have to ensure that we're ready for an AI initiative?
Sure. So when I was in my sales role, and I'll probably still do this internally at Amgen, but I had like a set of questions I'd ask every single manufacturing leader that I was, having a discovery call with, in order to evaluate whether or not I could sell them my product, right? So when I was at the computer vision startup, it was essentially the easiest way for us to integrate into their production was, and the one question they needed to answer was, do they have their data on the cloud? Because if they did, it made it very easy to get that data through like a quick API pull, and then process it through our platform and provide them the solutions that they might be looking for. So that was for a computer vision application, and you'd be surprised at how many manufacturers weren't willing to put their data on the cloud, or you might not be surprised, but that was a big thing. So that would kind of almost, not to say that it would totally eliminate them from leveraging computer vision, but it would make it a little bit longer of a process, and require more effort into accessing that data. For example, if a manufacturer had their data on-prem, that was always a challenge. And I understand, the reasons behind that, but it makes it a little bit harder to implement AI quickly. And then from like that exact example, but then some of the other questions are about, the personnel. Like, do you have, a facility, or are there people in your organization that are willing to, they have an appetite for this and they want to, be part of this? That buy-in is really important. And if you don't have that buy-in, that's a big block. I'd say that's a big block for AI readiness in general. Then when it comes to like the foundational AI readiness evaluation, I guess what I'd say is, definitely if you're just collecting data on like an Excel sheet, that's going to be a little bit down the road. You need to have hardware that's able to generate the data and collect the data. Connectivity is really important. But I mean, again, it kind of depends on the use case and the application. You don't have to do the whole facility if you just have a hunch that something's going wrong in one aspect. Like sensors, for example. I was talking to one, like somebody at a lube blend plant, and he had a hunch that there was something. I kind of was alluding to this earlier. I'll give you more context though. He was saying that he thought that one of his 8 blending lines, one of them, a pump was going slower, and he really wanted that pump replaced, but upline wouldn't let him get it replaced because he had no way to prove his suspicion. And I was like, well, you can find that out if you just buy pump sensors, and it's not that expensive. So if he were to go get pump sensors and, do a comparison, he could understand that, validate his concern. But the other benefit there is by collecting that data, and corroborating it maybe with data upline, like in lubricants, you're basically, it's a recipe that's very specific and you need it to come out a certain way. Knowing how your equipment is operating is vital, but then also knowing what the ingredients are that are coming through is really important too. So the AI readiness in that equation could be as simple as, a couple sensors and quality data on the front end, and then quality data on the back end. So it doesn't need to be a massive data collection, but if you don't have data being stored somewhere and collecting somewhere, then that would be the hindrance to being able to leverage AI.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's huge. I mean, what you just said is huge for a lot of manufacturers. I mean, a lot of them don't have that readiness or those foundational elements in place. So, while we're all excited about AI, we also have to sort of back up at times and say, well, what are the foundational pieces we need before we can really realistically use AI? And I think that's a big challenge for companies today, and something that I would think sort of puts them at risk of potentially falling behind the whole AI trend or movement is, because if you're busy fixing all these foundational pieces, even though you need to, technology's changing, other people are getting ahead. So, I mean, the sooner you can get some of these things in place, I think the better.
Yeah. And also, was it Will that said the industry expertise is beneficial? I think that's really true. Like, given that I was able to work with so many manufacturers, and I was able to do this exercise with so many manufacturers in different industries, I got a good handle on use cases and applications where it could be very feasible and provide a lot of value very quickly. So I started to become pretty good at knowing what questions to ask in order to get to that value and feasibility, and then come up with a plan, because obviously my job at the time was to sell technology. So I wanted to make it a big ROI for them. And without that industry expertise and then the experience, seeing successes and failures, I wouldn't know how to get to that ROI as quickly. And that's where I think a lot of the bigger tech companies, well, of course they have expertise. Sometimes they don't have as micro expertise in manufacturing. So the solutions they're proposing don't always have an ROI because they don't really know how to implement it effectively where it might result in one. And I think that's another thing for manufacturers who haven't implemented AI much, is they also don't really know where to start in all cases. Sometimes they do, but it is a challenging experiment and thought exercise. But when you have that planning right up front, it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we sort of summarize a lot of what we've talked about here today, and, we've talked a lot about different trends, a lot of foundational things we need to have in place before we can take advantage of AI. We've talked about how we could start to leverage AI on a small use case basis. So we talked about a lot of stuff. And again, coming back to the whole thread we've been circling around, which is this is complicated stuff. It can be overwhelming. There's a lot of options, a lot of choices, a lot of directions we can go with AI. If we sort of back up and you were going to give us sort of a high level roadmap, how should a manufacturer just get started to navigate some of these different opportunities and challenges that we're talking about?
So start with the business need first and foremost. That's the other thing depending on the role, right? I'll ask, what is your goal in your role? So if it's somebody in operations, it's probably throughput or yield, or if you're in paper, it's reducing variance or variability. So I start with that, and then I'm like, okay, well, why? And tying it to the business value. Well, what if you were able to increase throughput by a percentage? What would that mean financially? So then we know the goal and what you're trying to do. And then it's okay, well, tell me about your production process and what is holding you back from, improving your production by 1%. And then you get more information there. Then, okay, well, do you have data? Are you collecting data? Do you have the hardware, the sensors that are producing the data? Okay, great. So then let's go ahead and implement it. And if it works and you get business value that you thought you would, if we reach this goal of increasing throughput by a percentage, and it brings you that value, you can justify then scaling it across your production lines, or if you have more than one facility. So the roadmap is start with the business, like whatever your goals are in your business organization at a very high level, even if it's as generic as, increasing your throughput, safety, whatever. Then from there, well, where could it actually fit in an application where we can just try it out and get value? Because that's what's going to justify the long-term commitment to that technology. And it's one of those things that can help you like fail fast or succeed fast. And basically, so if you start with the business value, you create a good team that's willing to go execute. And it starts also too with the leadership. You have to also reward this behavior, like incentivize and then also showcase the successes. Everybody wants to be part of, a positive project. And if you show off the facility that's successfully implemented something, it creates more buy-in from peers and it can spread. So business value, specific use case, start small even and then scale if it works. And then from a roadmap of like implementing new, like your foundational technologies, if you have more than one facility, just start with one and see what works. And then, scale it that way. But if you have one and you're not very digitally advanced yet, I guess I'd say prioritize investing in that hardware, and that if you're going to get a historian, that takes a little bit of time, but that would be the foundational pieces that you need to kind of start with.
Yeah. And you may not have the whole long-term roadmap figured out, and you may not know enough to be able to say, here's our 3 to 5 year AI and technology roadmap, but you could start, like you said, on a smaller scale and at least have some sort of deliberate plan of how you're going to get started. And then as you learn and innovate and scale, then, obviously you can pivot and adjust as you need to, as you keep going.
Well, what I say about the people that have a 5-year roadmap is it's never, it's rare that they stick to that 5-year roadmap.
Yeah.
But also, measuring, like the people part of it too, understanding, is it being utilized long-term? And I think that's the important thing to know. Just as AI is evolving and changing rapidly, I think our approaches to it need to be the same, and our attitudes towards it needs to be the same if we're going to actually get a lot of value. The manufacturers that do the best job are like the lighthouse facility manufacturers. And I'd say that that's what they're really good at. They just go for it and they do it. I don't get held back by overthinking and wanting to do the massive scope. Picking specific spots where you can implement it and get value. That's where you're going to make change.
Well, thank you, Kate. Great conversation. Really enjoyed having you on the show, and great audience questions as well. So thank you for that. A lot of good stuff that we learned there. Would love to have her back on the show to chat more about AI, change management, manufacturing, all kinds of stuff that we didn't get to, but a lot more we could cover next time. So hopefully we'll have her back on the show at some point in the future. So we're going to shift gears after this segment here. We're going to get into a new segment. We're going to talk about digital maturity. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about digital maturity, what it is, how to measure it, how to improve it within your organization. So be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more on Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful things, if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 183. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And so, Darian, we've got this video that was recently published on my YouTube channel. It's called What is Digital Maturity? And in the video, it's sort of a whiteboard session where I sort of sketch out what digital maturity is, how to measure it, how to improve it, what it means to your organization, all that good stuff. What, I guess before we roll the clip, what was some of the thoughts you had on why you thought this might be interesting to the audience here today?
Yeah, I think you guys are really going to appreciate the focus that Eric had on creating a realistic and incremental roadmap towards achieving digital maturity rather than expecting overnight transformation, and what that roadmap really looks like to achieving digital maturity. So I think that's something when we roll the clip to look for and really pay attention to kind of if you are expecting a quick transformation, hopefully this kind of shifts your mindset into what that roadmap actually looks like.
Well, good. Well, don't take my word for it. We won't take your word for it, Darian. Let's just roll it for the audience, see what they think. So we'll play this clip here of what is digital maturity. When we're helping clients with their digital transformation journeys, helping them define a digital strategy and ultimately execute that digital strategy, one of the first things we do is we try to assess what the digital maturity of the organization is versus what they want their digital maturity to be. We also use that as an opportunity to benchmark against other organizations throughout the world. So what I want to do today is talk about not only what digital maturity is, but more specifically how you can assess your own digital maturity and how you can define what that future state is or should be for your organization. And I'll also talk about some of the pitfalls along the way as well. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. Before we dive into how to assess your digital maturity and how to define what you want your digital maturity to be, it helps to, first of all, define what exactly is digital maturity. What are some of the different components of it? So that's where I'll start. So first, when you think about digital maturity, one of the first things you think about is the technology you have in place. So this would be looking at the systems you have in place. For example, are you using an old, outdated mainframe-based system that has the old green screens with the transaction codes? Are you using an outdated ERP system? Are you using a fairly modern ERP system, but you've outgrown it, you're looking for something new? Are you still using Excel spreadsheets and pens and paper? I mean, there's a lot of different places you can fall on the digital maturity scale just simply based on the technology you use. However, technology is just one component of digital maturity. There's a lot more to it than just the technology itself. Another dimension is going to be the skills. What skill set do you have on your IT staff? And a lot of times this is going to correlate pretty closely to the type of technology you have. If you have really old technology, you probably have pretty outdated skills. But some organizations have outdated technologies, but they have skill sets that are more modern. So in other words, they might have grown their IT staff to include more modern skills to help them get to the point where they can increase their digital maturity, while some other organizations have the same IT staff or the same skills and competencies that they've always had. And that's okay. Right now, we're just trying to understand what our maturity is. We're not here to necessarily say it's good or bad. We just want to understand what it is. We also have to look at our business processes too. So just because we have new or old technologies doesn't necessarily mean our processes are optimized or sub-optimized just because of where we are with our technology. You could have the most modern ERP system in the world, but have completely sub-optimized business processes because you're not using the technology appropriately or because you're continuing to do things an old way that you used to do things. Or you could have an old ERP system that you've highly customized, but it's super outdated, but the processes are pretty mature. So there's a disconnect potentially between where you are on the spectrum or the scale of business processes versus technology and skills. They might all be the same, but they might also be very different as it relates to business processes. And then finally, another major dimension of digital maturity is going to be your architecture and data. So this is different from technology. This is more focused on systems up here, just to clarify. Down here, we're talking about architecture and data. And what we mean here is how integrated are our systems. So we could have really outdated technologies, and we might have multiple technologies, but we've got a pretty solid architecture that ties those systems together. We might also have good or bad data. We might have really clean data in an old system. We might have a new system that's more mature, but the data's a mess, and that would suggest that you lack maturity in the data competency. So we also have to look at not just the software technology, but also the architecture in the data and the way we've structured our technologies. So these are just some of the components of what constitutes digital maturity. And generally what we're doing here is we're looking at, on a continuum, where do we fall on each of these different categories. We're trying to understand, are we fairly immature over here? Or are we fairly mature over here? Or are we somewhere in between? So there's a lot of different places you might fall on this continuum, and the key is to do a self-assessment and be self-aware of where you fall on this continuum. And again, we have to get out of that mindset of saying this is good or bad, because it's not. This is just the reality of who we are as an organization. It's gotten us to where we are today. Now we want to assess where we are and then define where it is we want to head in the future. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. We're here playing you the clip of digital maturity, what it is and what it means to your organization. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to episode number 183 of Transformation Ground Control. This is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including the people, process, and technology sides of transformation. We're here playing you a YouTube clip from my channel talking about digital maturity and what it means to your organization and how you can improve it for your organization. Let's continue rolling the clip here. So I started to talk here about where we are in our current state. Where on the spectrum do we fall? And I'm actually going to erase this for a second, and I'm going to come back to this point and draw out some examples here. So when we're assessing the current state, there's a few different dimensions we want to look at that I've mentioned so far. So here's where we start to look at how each of these different categories rate in our current state. And we want to really articulate and clarify and understand what these different areas of maturity are. So I talked earlier about how with our technology and systems, we want to define what exactly it is we have. For example, is it an old AS400 mainframe? Is it a new ERP system? Is it lots of spreadsheets? We want to assess and understand what it is we have and what we're dealing with as a way to really benchmark and understand how we compare to where we are today and also where we want to be in the future and how we compare to other organizations as well. And so when we look at this, we assess the current state and we sort of assign a score. Is it red, yellow, green? There might be some areas where we're strong. We've got a fairly high degree of maturity. And there's going to be some areas that might be red, and there's going to be a bunch of areas that are probably yellow or somewhere in between. So that's really what we have to understand here is the current state of our current systems, the skills, the business processes we have, and again, the architecture and data. We talked about that before too. If you have siloed systems, the data's a mess, you don't have good data in your systems, maybe they're still tracked in Excel spreadsheets or people are manipulating the data outside the system, that would suggest you're at a lower level of maturity than if you have really clean data and tightly integrated systems and that sort of thing. So the key here is to understand where the strengths and weaknesses, where are we today, and most importantly, where is it we want to go in the future, and that's what I'll talk about next. So now that we understand what our current state is, now we have to define what our desired future state is. And this is a bit trickier than it sounds because it's not as simple as saying we want this utopia future state, this perfect world where everything's great and we overnight transform ourselves into a digitally mature organization. However, we also want to make sure we have a long-term view of where it is we're headed, knowing that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. There's probably going to be incremental phases and incremental steps along the way. So in our future state, we might say, well, we want a postmodern or a composable ERP system. We might envision a future state where we're using AI. We might envision a future state where we're using data and analytics to provide better insights into our business. We might have optimized business processes that are streamlined and reducing cost and making us more profitable as a business. All these different things that we define that we want to have within our future state. And again, this isn't going to happen overnight. This transition from where you are today, the maturity level today, and where you want to be in the future is going to take years in most cases. So the key here is to paint that future vision, but then know that we need to take this future state and break it down into more incremental steps to help us get there. Now, I have another video on my YouTube channel that I encourage you to check out. You can find it right here, and it's about how to create a digital strategy for your organization. In fact, it's a deep dive training session on digital strategy. You can find that video right here, and that unpacks all the different dimensions of defining a digital strategy and really helping close this gap between your current state and your future state. But for today's purposes, I'll just mention that you want to define what that future state is so that you have a clear vision of where it is you're headed with your overall transformation. So now we have our desired future state, and let's assume we also have our digital strategy here. We have a roadmap for how we're going to get there, and then we start taking incremental steps, and we go through a implementation of a new ERP system. We deploy some new AI tools. We deploy data analytics. We think we've optimized our business processes, or we try to optimize our business processes. But there's an interesting phenomena that often happens where we have a digital maturity here that's suboptimal, and we want to move towards a better and a more mature digital state of maturity. And so what I want to do here is show you what often happens is this desired future state becomes moot, not because we don't want it, but because we don't achieve it. What often happens is organizations will find that the actual future state is somewhere different. What I mean by this is oftentimes when organizations don't manage their transformations well to get from here to here, they actually end up somewhere back over here, worse off than in their current state. And that's exactly what you don't want. You do not want to go through all this time and money and heartache trying to go through a digital transformation to achieve these things only to end up setting yourself back. And let me explain what I mean by this, because that may sound counterintuitive or maybe even impossible, but it's very possible and it happens more often than you might think. And the reason for that is oftentimes organizations will take too big of a jump, or they'll try to take too big of a jump overnight, or even worse, they'll try to take a big jump and they don't invest the right time and energy and resources in the project, and they end up with a very suboptimal set of new technologies that actually put them back. And an example of how that could happen is you look at this example here with the organization that's using an old mainframe system. And let's assume this mainframe system has been highly customized over the last 30 years. And most people would say, well, you definitely want to get off that old mainframe because you don't want an old technology that's highly customized. You want to use best practices and off-the-shelf cloud solutions with AI and all that stuff. That's great. You probably do want that. But if you don't make this leap effectively, chances are pretty high you're going to implement technology that just sits there and doesn't do anything for you. In fact, in many cases, it's going to water down some of the competitive advantages or some of the unique nuances or strengths of your company because you didn't deploy the technology effectively. And what that does is it sets you back and actually pushes you back towards less maturity. Sure, you might have more modern technologies, but if we go back to this list of what digital maturity is, now we find that, okay, we've got more modern technologies, but the skills don't match the technologies that we have in place now. The business processes have not been optimized. In some cases, the processes might have actually gotten worse because we didn't tailor the technology or deploy the technology in a way that works for our business. And architecture and data could still be a mess. You still might have disparate systems. Yes, they're more modern systems, but they're disparate now. Maybe the data wasn't cleaned up and now the data is still a problem. So if you look at that, that's how organizations often end up in this mess or this quandary where they think they're going here, but they actually take a step back. So the key becomes, or the question becomes, how do we actually get to that desired future state? And that's what I'm going to talk about next is how do you optimize your digital maturity? So now the question is, how do we optimize our future state? If I'm telling you that it's possible to paint a vision of the future, but you might actually end up taking steps back, how do I avoid that? How do I ensure that I'm actually taking steps forward in optimizing my digital maturity? And the first thing I would suggest is that you absolutely need to do this current state. If you do the current state and you have that self-awareness of where you are today and what your strengths and your weaknesses are, that's the first step towards getting to where it is you want to be. The second really important thing to do is to balance the future state in a way that's not just focused on long-term strategy, but also short-term. Too often organizations get caught up in the long-term strategy, but they can't figure out how to execute and how to get there. And like I said before, they try to take too big of a leap in too short of a time, and it's just not realistic. And that's the other thing, is you want to be realistic. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice I could give you, is be realistic on how you're going to achieve this roadmap right here. And the more realistic you are and the more of a handle you have on how much time and effort and resource and risk is it really going to take, the better off you're going to be and the more likely it is you're actually going to make progress in moving and advancing your digital maturity. So I hope this has provided you some understanding of what digital maturity is. I'd love to hear your feedback. How does your organization compare to others, do you think? Where do you find you in your organization to be extremely digitally mature? I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. All right, so that was the clip from my YouTube channel about what is digital maturity. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that clip, Darian?
Yeah, I just have a couple follow-up questions really from this conversation, or I guess this YouTube video that we played, but I want the audience to get in on this conversation and ask questions or anything if you guys have them. But I have a couple questions I know to follow up from this video to kind of expand on what we were talking about. So one of the things you talked about was how to find the balance between technology. So how do you find, I guess to get further into that, how do you find balance between the focus between technology, skills, business processes, and data architecture and assessing your digital maturity?
Well, I mean, I think unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, they're all important. So it's you have to balance them all. You know, you have to look pretty critically at all of them. And for some organizations, they're going to find that one or more of these areas is more important to them. It could be more important because they're weak in it and they know they need to up their game in that area. It could be that just given the industry they're in, they know that they need to leapfrog their competition in some way, or it could just be part of their overall, cultural change they're trying to go through. So I think you just have to look at, once you've assessed all these different areas and you see where the gaps are, that's when you prioritize for yourself what's most important. So I'd say they're all important to assess. And then once you figure out what your path or your plan is to fix or increase your digital maturity, that's where you start to prioritize based on who you are and what you're trying to be.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And you talked about once you assess, all of your different technologies. But I want to ask maybe this question from a company's point of view. Let's say I'm a company and I'm doing a self-assessment of my digital maturity. How can I make sure that this is an accurate assessment and unbiased because it's my company?
Yeah. I mean, hiring an independent, tech agnostic, objective outsider expert like our team at Third Stage Consulting is one example. You want someone like that sees a lot of different companies every day and they can compare and benchmark you to what they see at other organizations. You also want someone that's not tied down or too personally or emotionally attached to the politics and the organization itself. You want someone that can come in with an unbiased, sort of fresh set of eyes and has done it, a million times before. So that I think is really the key to doing it. Because you're right, it is hard to look at yourself and say, like for me, I can't really look at myself and say, am I a good looking guy or not, without saying, well, let me look at like 10 other guys and then I can figure out if I am or not. That's probably a terrible example because I wouldn't be able to tell you if the other 10 guys are good looking or not, but whatever. Hopefully you get my failed analogy there. Hopefully still gets the point across, but the point being is all relative to what, it's all relative to how you stack up and how you compare to other organizations. And you're just not going to know that without doing that sort of assessment.
For sure. Yeah. Interesting example there, but we'll take it if it works.
It's got to work for
my
someone.
last question. Yeah, exactly. My last question here is, what strategies do you recommend for businesses to maintain and continuously improve their digital maturity?
Say that again. What strategies can they do to increase their digital maturity?
To maintain and continuously improve their digital maturity.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not like a one-time deal where you just measure it, change it, and then you're done. You've got to keep going through this maturity assessment, this maturity exercise. And so it's really a habit, or it's a matter of setting up sort of a habitual cadence that becomes the way you measure it, and you sort of keep a pulse on it. It's not going to be every week or every month necessarily, but every quarter or two, you might want to be assessing, okay, where do we stand now? How are we changing? How are we evolving? How are our needs changing and evolving? How's the world around us changing and evolving that might affect how we assess our own digital maturity? So I think doing it and having a deliberate cadence behind it is the best approach to keep a pulse on that over time.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that is ever evolving and something that you definitely have to keep up with as long as your company is running, for sure.
Well, good. Well, good stuff. Hopefully this has given you all some food for thought as it relates to all the different topics we've covered here. Look forward to our upcoming episodes. We've got a lot of good guests coming up here in the coming weeks, so be sure to keep an eye on our website at transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can see all the new episodes that are released every Wednesday. And you can also go to that same website too. If you go to transformationgroundcontrol.com, you can also see all the different ways you can subscribe to it. If you want to subscribe on the audio only and or on YouTube or LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, you can do all that by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. So thank you again for a great episode, Darian. Thank you to Kate Arndt for being here today. Thank you to the audience for being here and all the great questions. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next week on next week's episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.